basically done is, once you click your button, you take the text from your text box, that's the one over here, and display it inside your text block, right? Suppose I write the button. See? So this is how you access your text from your text box. You simply write textbox.text. This dot text to access your text box is text is common for text box and text block. Right? So you get that part here. Whenever you want to access the text that's inside the text block, inside whatever is related to text, you just write dot text. You can access it. Cool. Then let's just get to the part where okay. Now what I have done is I simply used a grid to basically arrange my different controls around. Okay. Now instead of all that, suppose I have all my grids, all my controls in the first row and first column. So what would happen? What has basically happened here is I put all of them together into one single part of the grid. So everything overlaps, you can't really know which one you're selecting, which one you're accessing and stuff like that. So if you want all of them to be in one single grid box and you still want to arrange them inside it, one of the basic things you can use is this. Select which all columns or which all controls you want. Right click them, then there's an option group into. You have these various options. A grid is basically what it already is. Okay? So leave the grid. Next comes relative panel. Relative panel I'll explain after we do stack panel. Okay? Let's just do stack panel. So what has just happened is it has aligned itself in a horizontal manner, has stacked itself horizontally. Now, okay. Because our grid has a row and column, let's just delete these columns so that it is not so we have our 4 controls stacked horizontally. Now as I showed you earlier, it's stacked horizontally. If you want, you can give it like ask the let's say the text box copy, that is for example the second control that's written over here. You can ask for it to be, let's say, right. From the ABC button, you can ask for it to be at a distance of 10. Okay. Oh, sorry, I just order the movement. Alright, the mask. So this moves away by 10, but it's still stacked horizontally. Now instead of this horizontal stack, you can have a vertical stack. How? You just change the orientation of the stack panel on the side. This, yeah, as you can see, orientation given as horizontal, change to vertical, and you have a vertical stack panel. Okay? So this is basically the use of having a stack panel. You can stack things relative to each other. Now, what's the difference between a stack panel? Okay, if you have things grouped into a control like this, and you want to remove it from that control and bring it back to what was there earlier, right click and just click undo. And everything stays like this because this was the last orientation or last configuration it had. Okay, and select all of them again. Right click. Now, what's the use of a relative panel? Relative panel is basically used so that you can arrange things relative to each other. For example, you have a button ABC, okay, and you have this. This is inside a relative panel with the rest of the others. So you have options to relatively. Okay, once you group a control into a relative panel, there is an option called relative panel. Then you have these various options that pop up there. Yeah. Above, below, left off, right off, alignment. Suppose you want to bring this text block to stay to the right of this button. Okay. You say that the text block TB should be at the right of isn't it BF? BF. But now do you realize why it came below but it's actually under this button? Because when we had put in the stack panel, they reordered themselves in a vertical order. So let's just read this thing. Okay. And let's just everything has a stack. As you can see over here, there is a margin of 64 that's set. Now the reason it's set is it's set at 64 from the top. Okay. Now again the reason to set is because we use a stack panel. So every time you remove a control like that, you need to know exactly what all can change. Because as you can see, I tried changing the shape, the height of the stack panel. I tried changing the height of the relative panel. I went to look at the width of the row, and then that was the problem. But then no, because basically that there was a margin set for this. You would not have set it, but then a control that you would have used would automatically set it. Okay, so you should know where exactly to look at when you start designing your apps. Now this was to the right of the button ABC. This is over below. Now let's get back to the relative panel right. Now let's put it above the button. Now the reason why it went above the button and it's not visible is because the row is defined at the moment as 160. Okay, and the DEF is set to be at the top. The DEF button is always set to be at the top. Vertical alignment is top. See? So basically, this is what you should look at when you start rearranging things. Every minute change in your layout matters. Okay? Even if, see, suppose the reason why I said this to 0 is once it's negative, okay, it starts moving out of the panel. It doesn't move in. Positive moves it into it. As in positive, see over here what's written is from the right hand side margin, if you give a positive value, it moves that much to the left. Right? But if you give a negative value, it moves into the right hand side margin, goes out of the way. So what happens is once you run it in your, like for now, it's fine. Because even if it goes out of this mobile's side, when you run it in your local machine, in your PC, you can still see it. So you won't see the difference now. But then later on, once you release your app onto mobiles, then you see these glitches. So always it's recommended that you do not keep margins, static margins, because you do not know how they react in different environments like that. So for now, we use just a text box. Now, it will just do that day. Video. Now this is how you create a grid within a grid. Now, okay, well, one more thing. You guys would know how to read XAML. Okay. Wait, I didn't get it over there. Okay. XAML, as I said that day, was a design language, and over here, what you can see can be seen in XAML 2. With that, I should write after this. But now, for now, you should understand what this means. There is a huge, there's a big thing called a page, which has the top app bar, the bottom app bar, and it has a grid. This is the basic thing that I said will be there by default. Now inside this grid, you have a radio panel, and you have another grid. Okay, so these two are separate controls that are inside this grid, right? So you need to understand that they are separate controls. Excuse me. And they are separate controls, and that each of them can be controlled separately. For the reason, you can give this relative panel a background and this grid another background or separate color, and that would affect what would be the color of this grid. It would affect these individually and not together on the other huge big one that they are in. Now, as I had told in your first class, you wouldn't really need to know how to write this XAML part because XAML is generated on its own. As I said, till 2013, you needed to write the XAML separately and then go to C# and write that separately. But then for now, all this is automatically generated. Now, as you can see, you have these two radio buttons. For example, once I click on this radio button, it's highlighted over here. Then I click on the next one, the second one is highlighted. And then I click on the text box, it is highlighted. Now, you can change these options over here. Suppose the content of the radio button, I make it just button. As you can see, the content of the radio button is simply this one. Change to radio button. That's why I said you don't really need to know how to write the XAML or create the XAML, because the same thing you can do over here in a much simpler way. As in you can see that the content is over here, it's button and you click over here and change over here, and as I said, change automatically in your XAML. You didn't need to do it separately. So this is the beauty of 2015 Visual Studio. As in, you don't need to know XAML also, but as I said, you would need to know how to read XAML for the simple reason that you would need to maintain other apps. Once you get apps from others, you would not be able to open it in Visual Studio. You will get your XAML code separately, you will get C# code separately, and you need to understand how both of them interact with each other. Right? So as I said, we have these two radio buttons. Now, remember I said in the first section that even if you have radio buttons, the basic property of radio buttons that only one should be highlighted at a time stays. Right? adding them separately, you click on the radio button and click on the next one. The other one automatically deselects and this one is selected. Now this is possible only when both of them are inside the same control. As in, these two radio buttons are inside one control. Okay. On the other hand, suppose I kept them inside this relative panel. Okay. They're on the you have these two radio buttons over here. Over here it works fine.